Here's what everyone else gets wrong about goal settings, not as students, but as adults. They treat January like it's the only time for you to reset. But September is actually one of the most powerful reset months of the year, and I'm about to tell you exactly why. So if you're watching this at the time of the upload, we have entered September. Everyone's obsessing over and romanticizing the back-to-school season. The binders, the lunch boxes, the cute notebooks. But who says those things don't apply to us working, ambitious, corporate baddies too? Why hasn't anyone else thought to incorporate the same motivation, drive, and cozy vibes of the back-to-school season into our own routines? Because girl, trust me, our fluorescent white lights and cubicle selves could use the mindset shift. So in this video, I'm going to break this down in what I would call the back-to-school but baddie edition. And trust me, this isn't your typical new season, new me content. This is about rewiring how you approach ambition, productivity, and how to approach your goals with that childlike wonder and aspiration that just feels lost to you right now. And we are going to do this in 5 steps. 1. The student mindset. 2. Addressing your weaknesses. 3. Focus and declutter. 4. Which might be the most important, which is rewiring your success programming. And finally, 5 is to teach you how to be ambitious again. So let's get started. You know that feeling when September is just around the corner and your FYP is filled with videos, all the back to school hauls, all the get ready to go back to school with me videos. And suddenly you're just so nostalgic for new school supplies or maybe just a fresh start. Well, that feeling isn't just nostalgia. It's your brain literally craving the structure and intentionality that we had as students but have totally lost as adults. And while everyone out there is making back-to-school content for teenagers or actual students, I'm sitting here thinking, what about us? What about the women who are building businesses, climbing corporate ladders, or just trying to figure out what the heck we're doing with our lives? Why do we always get left out of this fresh start narrative every September? I spent the last 2 years watching the women around me just burn out because they're treating their lives as if it's one endless summer. No structure, no intentional resets. Just grinding it until they collapse. And I've been there too. I was literally that person that thought hustle harder was a personality trait. Till I realized that I was just running on fumes and calling it productivity. So think about this, when you were a student, every September meant new classes, new goals, new opportunity to reinvent yourself. You had built-in checkpoints, clear objectives, and most importantly, you had the permission to start afresh. But somehow as adults, we convince ourselves that we're stuck with whatever momentum that we had started on in January, or that we had to wait till the new year to make changes. But that is complete nonsense. Last September, I was literally going through what I would call a quarter-life crisis. I had graduated with a degree, had a good job, checking all the boxes. But I felt like I was sleepwalking through my own life. You know that feeling when you're busy but not fulfilled? Productive but not purposeful? I remember sitting around recently, seeing students walking around with their fresh notebooks and color-coded binders, feeling so nostalgic and maybe even a little bit jealous. Not because of their age, but because of their intentionality. They had semesters, clear goals, built-in reflection periods. They had systems. And here's the trap that you and I have fallen into. We've been conditioned to believe that once you graduate, you should have it all figured out. No more experimenting, no more pivoting, no more fresh starts. Just grind until you retire. How depressing is that? But what if I told you that the most successful people out there, they treat their lives like they're still students? Not in an immature way, but in a curious, experimental, growth-oriented way. They give themselves permission to have semesters, to pivot, to try new approaches. This is what I call the student mindset, and it is the very first pillar for this entire back-to-school baddie edition framework. But before I jump into that, let me ask you something important. When's the last time you gave yourself permission to be an absolute beginner at something? To not have all the answers? To approach your goals with genuine curiosity instead of desperate pressure? Because here's what I learned through the whole process of understanding and allowing myself to try new skills. Ambitious women who embrace this mindset don't just achieve more, they actually enjoy the process much more. They don't burn out because they're not treating every day like it's some final exam. So let's start with the mindset shift. The student mindset is all about approaching your goals and your life with that same curiosity and experimental attitude that you had as a student. What this means is, first, giving yourself permission to not know everything. I see so many people out there being so paralyzed because they feel like they should have everything mapped out before they start. But think about it. When you were back in school, you had no idea how each semester would unfold. You had a general direction, but you stayed open to new ideas, new information, new interest, new opportunities. Here's how this played out for me. Instead of pressuring myself to have this 5-year plan carved out in stone, I started treating each quarter like a semester. I picked 2 to 3 main courses to focus on. Maybe that's learning a new skill, developing a relationship, or working on this specific project. At the end of each quarter, I'll do what students naturally do: reflect, evaluate, and then adjust for the next semester. This completely changed how I approach setbacks too. Instead of seeing failure as if I was on some wrong path, I started seeing them as valuable data points. Just like how getting 1 bad grade in one class doesn't mean you're a bad student. It just means that you probably need to adjust your study strategy. And you know what's crazy? This mindset shift alone improved my mental health more than any productivity hack ever could. Because suddenly, I wasn't supposed to have it all figured out. I was just supposed to be learning. Now that you've allowed yourself to be imperfect and have given yourself permission to grow, the second part of this framework is where you allow yourself to address your own mental weak points. You know how in school you would avoid the hardest topics until the very last possible second? Well, guess what? You're still doing that with your life today. I'm 100% sure that there's something that you've been putting off. Some area where you keep telling yourself, I'm just gonna deal with that later. And lying to yourself that if you just pretended that that thing didn't exist, then that problem or subject would just fade away. Which, girl, we know that is not the case. Not doing that math practice paper might be how it looks like in school, but in our adult lives today, where the stakes aren't just exams or submissions, this is going to look like avoiding the thing that would have the most impact on your business, or procrastinating on taking action and telling yourself that you just need to do more research. Sounds familiar? Here's what I learned from my confidence video series that I've uploaded just a few videos back. And you can check them out here if you need. But most of our productivity and confidence blocks stem from unaddressed insecurities. If you're procrastinating on that project, it's probably not because you're lazy. It's probably because somewhere in your mind, you think that you're not good enough, or that you might make mistakes and not be perfect. So before you plan your perfect September goals and schedule, get honest with yourself about where you're actually struggling. Is it decision making? Is it the fear of judgment? Is it perfectionism disguised as high standards? The ambitious women I know aren't struggling with motivation. They're struggling with the mental load. And until you clear that load, every productivity system that you try will ultimately just crumble under the weight of your unprocessed thoughts. And this brings me to the next thing that is going to sound completely counterintuitive, but stay with me. The most ambitious thing you can do this September isn't putting more onto your plate. It's actually getting ruthless about what gets to stay on it. This is where most people would skip because it sounds totally unsexy, but this step will completely make or break everything, because for this third point, you can actually twist this and manipulate it to your benefit, because you simply cannot think clearly when your brain is cluttered with all this mental junk. So this is a time to start removing all that digital trash, and this can be done in 2 ways. The first is by ensuring that you are laser focused and crystal clear on your goals for this semester of your life. You know how in school, you don't just attend classes randomly. You had a carefully curated schedule based on your major, your interest, your goals. But somehow as adults, we say yes to everything, and then are so confused as to why we feel scattered. So here's what this looks like for me, just so I can give you some real-world examples. Instead of trying to be good at everything, I started asking myself, what would be my core subjects this season? What deserves my deep attention? What aligns with who I'm becoming, not just who I've always been? So for me, this September, my core subjects would be content strategy, building my businesses, and lots of learning. Everything else is either an elective or it's just getting dropped from my schedule. Period. The second part to this, which I think is actually way more important, because you can actually twist and manipulate this for your benefit, and that is to remove the mental trash. Your brain has limited processing power. Every notification, every mindless scroll session, every piece of content that doesn't align with your goals is literally stealing cognitive resources from the things that actually matter to you. I'm not saying become a monk and just delete all social media. I'm saying be strategic about what gets access to your attention. Because right now, you're letting random strangers on the internet reprogram your mind based on what they had posted that day. So use website blockers during your power hours. Turn off notifications for anything that isn't urgent. And here's the part that nobody talks about. Excessive scrolling actually shrinks your mental capacity. You're training your brain to need constant stimulation, which makes focused work feel impossible. But don't worry, not all hope is lost, because just as I promised you, this is how you're going to manipulate watching content to your advantage. The content you consume is literally rewiring your brain's neural pathways. And if you're constantly watching content that makes success look impossible, that celebrates being too cool to try hard, you're programming yourself for mediocrity. I used to follow all these accounts that made life look miserable, that treated ambition like it was embarrassing, the kind of content where people would just complain about how others always seem to be luckier, how they always seem to have opportunity, whereas they have always been stuck in square one. Just very bad vibes and not pleasant thoughts to fill my mind with. And then I wondered why I always felt resistance every time I tried to level up. Your brain doesn't know the difference between what you actually think and what you repeatedly watch. So if your feed is just constantly filled with people complaining about Monday mornings and treating productivity like punishment, that's literally just becoming your default mindset. So here's how I use this to my advantage and how you can too. I started consuming content that made effort look so attractive. Movies about people who work hard and love what they do. Books by people who found fulfillment through discipline. And accounts that celebrate the progress, not just the results. And suddenly, preparing for things became exciting, not just exhausting. And this is proof that as long as you're consistent, your habits will pay off, because I myself only started on this self-improvement and productivity journey this year. And before that, I had never even read a non-fiction book before in my life. I'd always gravitate to and just devour fiction books because, as the name suggests, I guess it just was more enticing and more entertaining. But when I started to really focus and get excited about what I was learning, I just couldn't get enough of the non-fiction books, the self-help, the business books. In fact, I haven't even read a new fiction book in such a long time, in months. And if you're interested, I'll be more than happy to share the books that I feel have had the biggest impact on me and have changed my life and the way I approach productivity and my goals. Because I do read a lot, I think. So if you're interested, just leave a comment below and I'll be more than happy to film a video about it. And this leads me to my next point, which is to rewire your success programming. This is the step that separates temporary changes from permanent transformation. Most people focus on changing their efforts without changing their underlying beliefs about success and effort. You need to understand something fundamental. Preparation beats expectations every single time. While everyone else is hoping that things go well, you can be someone who makes sure that they go well. Most people don't adequately prepare for anything. They show up, they wing it, and then wonder why their life feels so chaotic. But when you become someone who over-prepares, who thinks through scenarios, who builds in buffer time, you're not just more successful, you're more calm. Here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Effort isn't embarrassing. It's exceptional. In a world where everyone wants to look effortless, being someone who visibly cares about the outcomes makes you stand out. View growth as success, regardless of the result. When you make trying hard part of your identity, you become unstoppable because you're no longer dependent on things going perfectly. And this is the point that links all previous points together, so listen carefully. You have to start being ambitious. Even as an adult, we can embrace academic ambition, the understanding that growth comes from consistent effort over time, not just from one perfect performance. Think about how you approach your different subjects in school. You didn't expect to understand calculus after just one lecture. You showed up, did the work, ask questions, and gradually build mastery. But somehow as adults, we expect ourselves to be experts almost immediately. And I'll be honest, this has been one of my hardest struggles. I'm naturally impatient and I want results yesterday. But watching myself trying to build a business with that mindset was like trying to watch someone cram for finals every single day, exhausting and ultimately ineffective. What changed was when I started treating skill building like coursework. Instead of expecting myself to be a content creator expert immediately, I gave myself a few weeks to focus on storytelling, a few weeks to focus on the design, and then a few weeks to focus on audience building. It's okay to want results that won't come true overnight. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with ambition and being in the season of learning, because you know that with the right mindset, the final exam isn't just a grade on a paper, but it'll be something you know deep down in your heart that you've worked so hard for and rightfully deserve. Now, this mental reset is powerful, but if you stop here, you're only addressing half the equation. All of this mindset work, all of this intentional focus, is actually just the foundation, because the real magic happens when you align your external environment with your internal intentions. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in part 2 of this series in my next video, where we'll be talking about the physical reset that supports everything that we've just gone through in this video. Because here's the thing, you can have the most perfect mindset, but if your environment is working against you, you're just fighting an uphill battle. And most women are setting themselves up to fail without even realizing it. So you now have the complete mental framework for your September reset. These 5 steps will clear that mental clutter that's been sabotaging every other system you've tried. And honestly, if you just implement these mental shifts, you'll see changes within the first week. I'm sure of it. So try it and then come back for part 2, because I'm going to show you exactly how you're going to create this environment that makes this kind of intentional living feel effortless instead of exhausting. So remember to leave a comment and subscribe, because the physical reset is where everything clicks into place and you don't want to miss it. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and your dreams. I'll see you in the next video very soon.